Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, which our wonderful library here takes on so well and does a great job. We're interviewing Ruben Phillips of Norwood, Ohio, a proud veteran of World War II, and we're honored to have him here. Dennis Daly is our videographer, one of the chief people in our wonderful history department of our public library. And you're going to get a DVD of this, Ruben, and for the family.
Looking forward to it.
And a copy goes to the Library of Congress in Washington, and the copy stays here in our archives. So you're on your history, and you're on the record. Getting started, where were you born, Ruben?
Corbin, Kentucky.
Corbin, Kentucky, way down.
And I was only there for about 3 months.
Oh,
we moved to Cincinnati.
Oh, you did?
And I worked for Milling Machine there.
Okay, now where did you go to elementary school?
Let me see now. It's in Oakley.
In Oakley?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I went to about 10 different schools.
Uh-huh.
I started in Oakley. I remember being there when I was just little.
Uh-huh.
And
how about high school?
I had 4 different high schools, and I ended up in Norwood.
Well, for goodness sakes, you really moved around a lot. You met a lot of people, huh?
I met a lot of people. Didn't get to know nobody real well.
I see. Tell us about your family. Brothers, sisters?
I've got 2 brothers and 1 sister. My sister passed away several years ago with a heart attack.
Sorry.
And my mother died with a stroke, and my father died with a heart attack.
Oh, my goodness sakes. Well, now, growing up, Oakley, Norwood, whatever, did you have particular interests in school? Did you have clubs or anything, athletics or anything like that you were involved in?
No, I wasn't.
Did you have an idea about what you wanted to do later on in life?
I had no idea what I was going to do.
I know,
I know just before I graduated, my dad was working at a milling machine company, and there was an opening there, and it was hard to get a job back then.
Oh boy.
And he asked them if they'd hire me, and they said they would. So I told my principal, I said, I got a chance for this job and I want to take it. Can I make up my grades and graduate? I can't do that. I said, well, I'm going to have to quit then because I got to have that job.
Yeah.
He said, don't quit, just don't come back. And the day that they would graduate, he sent me my cap and gown, and I graduated with him.
Oh, wasn't that nice? That was great. Well, what did you do at the mill?
Well, I started out there as a laborer, and I started going to school at night, and then they put me to work at night, so I had to quit that. So I took some correspondence courses in electronics, television, radio.
Good for you.
And the company finally started an electronic department, and I was the only one that knew anything that they knew of.
Right.
So they gave me a job.
So
I was in that then for the rest of my time. I was there for 41 years.
Well, for heaven's sakes. Well, obviously you had an easy adaptation to this sort of thing. You liked technology and
I loved that work.
Scientific things.
I would have went to work if it didn't pay me. That's how good I liked it.
Well, the mill in those days too, that was a really great organization, wasn't it?
Yes, they give you a job to do it and let you do it.
Yeah, and working on machine tools and high-tech stuff.
Well, we got a line tracer from England, and that was our first project.
I'll be done.
I think we had like 140 transformers on that thing. It was a big job.
Wow, I'll say.
And I learned a lot there.
Well, I'll bet you did.
I was, me and one other guy was in that department. And they give us the charts, and we ordered the parts and build everything.
Sure.
From ground up.
Did you meet any of the Geyers?
Yeah.
Sure. Old Fred, old Frederick.
He was a great guy.
Yeah, everybody
Frederick
spoke
was,
highly of him.
yeah.
Well, now about your family and your brothers and your sister. You all, are you the oldest, or
I'm the oldest,
you're the oldest?
and I got my one next to me. He was in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
and the younger one, he didn't serve.
Now, were they all in? This was in Norwood.
Hmm.
Okay, and
During the Depression, we moved back to Tennessee. That's where my mom and dad was raised,
I see.
and we were tenant farmers there.
All
We'd
right.
work for somebody for a day to get to use their mule a day, so we could
My God.
plow a field. And we'd clean up ground, and we get it cleaned up. And
You used a mule to plow
Yeah.
ground? Isn't that something? Boy, you are a pioneer.
I remember when the Depression was over, and my dad was come back to work and mowing the machine, and Mom and the rest of the family came up, and they left me there to clean up the stuff. But before we left, my mother made a comment that she'd like to have some fresh pork for breakfast. Well, I didn't tell her, but I got up early enough before I went to school, and I went out and built a fire and caught me a pig, and I butchered it.
Oh my
I
God.
took it in. We had ham that morning for breakfast.
Boy, oh, you're a very resourceful guy. Now, you graduated from Norwood High?
I graduated from Norwood.
Okay, and that would have been what, 1939?
Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, that was my
Because
year.
I worked for a year before I went into service.
You were born in 1921?
21.
What date?
January 17th.
Okay, you're just a month older than I am. How about that? Well, that's,
We both still got our hair.
we both got our hair and we've got good health, you know, and most of our minds anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you know, growing up in those days, tell us about some of your Depression Day memories.
Well, it was kind of rough.
Yeah.
We would, just as children, we'd get up, and my dad, of course, always with us, and we'd go out and cut briars and grub shoemakers off of the ground and just clean it up.
Sure.
And we did that from early morning to late in the evening.
Wow.
And
Hard labor.
we had to have a place to live, and we'd find somebody with an old house that we'd fix it up, we could stay there.
Right.
We'd get it fixed up, and then they'd need it for one of their
Oh, of
families.
course.
So we went about 2 or 3 different places we did that.
Is that so?
And so we'd come up the hard way.
Well, you did, and of course, at the same time, you learned invaluable lessons.
Yes, we did.
And you learned skills,
Yeah,
and you learned to cooperate with your family and people. Those were really interesting times. People say, oh, you know, they don't understand the Depression days, but those of us who have a good memory and remember that sort of a time, it was really a formative period.
when
in
the
life.
first day of May come, that's when we pulled our shoes off and went barefooted.
How about that? And go swimming in the
We'd
old
go
creek.
swimming. Yeah, we had a hole in the creek about a couple of 100 yards away from the house, and we'd go there and we'd go skinny dipping.
Sure, you bet. Jumping off the log or
Yeah.
jumping off a rock or something like that. Yeah. Well, that is so interesting, and I know that, you know, your friends and your family who will see this will appreciate your stories about that. So along came 1939. You graduated from high school. You had your cap and gown and everything. That's wonderful. Then you were working at the mill.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did you work at the mill before service?
About a year.
About a year.
I was the first one drafted that worked at the mill.
Oh, you were? Well, that's a historic thing.
I remember I come home on furlough once, and they had me on the radio.
Really?
They interviewed me.
On WLW?
Yeah.
Oh
WLW.
my gosh, how about that? You know, they just are celebrating their 75th year this year.
Yeah.
With that historic radio station. So you're a part of history there too. Now, where were you on Pearl Harbor Day? Remember Pearl Harbor Day?
Yes, I remember that. We lived in Norwood, and I was laying on the floor, I think, listening to the radio. TV One. I don't know if we had a TV back then or not.
No, we didn't. Not
I
yet.
don't think so.
No.
And they announced it.
Yeah. You heard it on the radio, and it was a Sunday, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think almost everybody who was old enough remembers that day.
Yeah.
That's one of those indelible memories in a person's life.
Yeah, we won't forget things like that.
No, I should say not. Well, now, when you heard that news, what did you think? Did you know where Pearl Harbor is and all that sort of thing?
We knew. I knew right then we were in for it.
Yeah, right.
And,
Yeah. Well, so you were drafted when? 41? 42. Right after Pearl Harbor. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Where did they send you right away?
I went over in Kentucky and was inducted.
Fort Thomas.
Fort Thomas.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly where I got my basic training, but when that was over, I went out to California.
Train travel.
Well, I've crossed the country, I think, 5 different times in a train. Train. And I know when I got wounded and come back there, I got a 30-day furlough. And I come home, I stayed 30 days, and I went back I was still in the hospital there.
Oh, you were?
And I packed my bed and went back to staying there.
How about
and
that?
my buddies around there that was leaving. And I went up to my doctor one day and I said, everybody that I know is leaving, when am I going to go? Well, go ask your doctor. I said, well, you are my doctor. They had lost all my records.
Oh.
They didn't have anything. They didn't even know I existed. So I had to take all those records over again, all those shots.
Oh my goodness sakes.
And I thought, well, boy, being a paratrooper would be better than what I was doing as a rifleman and a machine gunner. So I asked them about that, and they said, yeah, but you had to have a certain IQ to do that. Well, I had to have the IQ anyway. And they checked it. Oh, you can do it.
Sure.
And,
well,
I backed out.
Good for you.
I said, no, I'm not going to do that.
So after Fort Thomas, then you went across the country on the train to the West Coast?
We were zigzagging back and forth across the country. We didn't know where we was going.
Right.
We kept trying to map it as we was going to figure out where we was going to end up, but you couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. And of course, in those days, you'd be sidetracked for fast freight trains and supply trains and so forth.
It took you a while to get across there.
It sure did. And some of those old rickety cars that they dragged out of retirement to put on the railroads, and bunks in the cars and so forth.
Yeah.
Soldiers and soldiers and soldiers. Well, in your basic training, did the Army understand your proficiency in tools and mechanics and things like that?
I don't think so. I know when I first went in, they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, I'd like to be a baker, go to a baking school. They said, well, we don't have any opening, but we got one for a cook. I said, I don't want to be a cook.
No, that's peeling potatoes.
But I did enough of that.
Yeah, right. Without being a cook even. Yeah, I know it. So where did you start in with your gunnery and that sort of thing? You remember that?
Well, because we I qualified in Rifleman and all that.
Right.
And I guess when they signed me to the 7th Division out there, that they just put me in the platoon as a heavy machine gun.
Boy.
And that's what I was in all the time.
Yeah. So now you talk about a heavy machine gun. What was that, a 50 caliber?
It's water cooled.
Water
30,
cooled?
Yeah. 150. 50 was on the Jeep, mounted on the Jeeps.
Oh.
The 30 we carried.
I see.
I remember the tri-pound weighed 51 pounds. I drug that thing all over Europe.
My gosh. How much did you weigh at that time? You remember?
Probably 130.
Dripping wet? Yeah.
I remember
God.
one time we had to cross a river, or more like a creek, I guess, and it fell a tree across it. And I walked across that with that thing on my shoulders. And then get on the other end, it's about, I guess, 5 or 6 feet to the ground. And instead of throwing that thing down and then jumping down after, I jumped down with it on my shoulder.
Oh.
And I messed up the fifth vertebrae in my back.
Oh boy. Well, now we want to get in line here historically, and so you were in several training camps around the country, different locations.
Yeah.
Now, were you in one division all the time, or were you? What was the division?
44th.
44th, and that was made up of mainly of fellas from where? Do you remember?
Yeah,
Was
they
it
were
this part of the
all over,
country?
I think.
All over the country. I know some divisions, came out of Kentucky and Ohio and so forth.
It was the 7th division that I was in when we went up to Aleutians. That's the 44th came later after I got out.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, now let's talk about that. You went to the Aleutians first?
Yeah. We had our amphibious training in San Diego.
Yep.
And I remember we had about 14 boats, Higgins boats that was wrecked. One of them was busted in half. And we were stranded there for a couple of nights. And while I was there, I got the mumps. I was in contact with the mumps.
Gosh.
So I was in the hospital.
Uh-huh.
The day I got out one day, and the next day we left for the Aleutians, for Attu. And that water was so rough. They had to put drags out behind the boats so you wouldn't run into them. Sideways, you just had to watch.
Wow.
And it was just up and down, and I'm telling you, it's terrible.
Now, was that a troop ship, or was that a small,
It was
like a landing craft?
Troop ship.
It was a troop ship.
And we landed on the small landing. Higgins boats, I think, what they call them.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Some of them the front left down.
Yep.
And
LST and LCI.
with all the trouble we had when we was training for it, when we landed up there, I didn't even get my feet wet. I walked right off on the ground.
How about that?
And it was just a cliff there, just straight up. And we had stopped in Alaska, someplace over there, and picked up some seasoned troops, 200. And some of those climbed that cliff
Yeah.
and dropped down a rope, and we pulled ourselves up on the top of that
my
thing.
gosh.
And we landed where they never would have thought we would have landed.
Right.
And they sent out a patrol, and they run into a Japanese patrol, and they killed them all.
I'll be darned. Do you remember what island was that?
Attu.
Attu.
And
I'm going to be interviewing a guy later this week a Japanese American, Nisei, who served in our army, and a very interesting fella. The Aleutians must have been a real shock to you, the weather and the water and everything.
It was cold. So being a machine gunner, I had oil for my gun. I used to oil my feet, carry some socks in my, well, we used to have a mask. I threw the mask away, I think, and used that to carry socks in.
Sure.
And I changed my socks, and I think that's what saved me.
Well, that's what saved you. That was very smart.
I still have problems with my feet.
Do you really?
And I still do. They get so cold.
Had frostbite?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a terrible thing to happen. Well, do you remember how long you were up there in the
The
Aleutians?
5th day I got wounded.
The 5th day?
5th day.
Now, where were you hit?
In my left thigh with a hand grenade, a fragment from a hand grenade.
Oh,
Thigh.
Oh, left thigh. I see. Oh my gosh. So, where did they take you for safety? And
I was the last one to get on board the boat that left for the home. Landed, I think they had me down in San Diego
okay,
or somewhere.
yeah. somewhere in California. Excuse me. I never got to the Aleutians in the Navy, but I've always been fascinated with that because it was so remote, and you know, there so many people didn't know anything about it.
It was a real rough place to be. That's about the worst combat I had.
Right.
I know they told us that they didn't expect to be anything on Attu. They thought they were all on Kiska, and they said in 36 hours we'd have a hot meal. Well, we had a hot meal about 4 or 5 days later. They were dug in. They lived underground.
Yeah.
I remember there was one place there where, you know, it was always cold. There was a hole there, I guess about that big. And I looked down in there, it's a big room. And I could see some blankets over in a corner.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, well, we need them blankets. And I tried to get in that hole. I couldn't. I had to take my pack off and left everything out. I just crawled down in that hole. I got the blankets.
Had the enemy left at that time?
There was one in the bed down there. I didn't know it when I crawled in there. I couldn't see when I got down in there. And I didn't waste any time. I crawled back out of that hole with my blankets.
But you got the blanket.
I got the blankets. And I told some of the other guys, I said, there's more down there, but there's somebody in a bed.
Oh,
so they threw some concussion grenades in there, and then they went down.
Yeah.
And,
Guys, that's just amazing. Well,
Right.
Ruben, so you said you were there on the 5th day you got wounded?
5th day.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I don't know exactly what day it was, but we were running awfully low on ammo. And me and 2 other guys went back to get some.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to cross a little creek, and one of them fell in, and he got wet.
Now that was pretty rugged land, wasn't it? Rocky and
You couldn't hardly dig. You couldn't dig a hole.
was there snow
But-
on the ground?
I don't remember the snow.
Huh.
But
Boy.
I know he took his clothes off and we wring them out best we could, and he put them back on.
Yeah.
And we made the rest of our trip back, and we got back up to where we were. They had been hit with artillery so bad that they just about annihilated the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a buck sergeant left in charge of our company.
Really?
And they call that Bloody Tree Knob, as I remember. But
How about that?
they didn't. At one point there was some of them killed with bayonets. They would come up on guard and
Hand-to-hand fighting.
And of course our guys they knew better. Now all they do is pull a trigger. And but one did get killed.
My goodness sakes. Well, that for a short period of time, you really.
They had a real good friend of mine got shot in the head. He was a gunner. I was a second gunner at that time, and he got hit in the head. At that same time, I got my pants hole. I had bullet holes in my pants legs.
No kidding.
It didn't hurt. It didn't
Went
touch
right
me.
through the pants.
Yeah, right through the, and I was #1 gunner from then on.
You were a lucky man,
Yeah,
I
I
should
was.
say.
I never did hear from him anymore. I don't know
No.
if he made it or not.
Did you have were there any friends from Norwood or Corbin, Kentucky around that you knew?
Just people that I got to know.
Yeah, right there in different situations. So when you were sent back to the hospital after your first wounding, how long were you in the hospital? Do you remember?
No, I don't. But when I got on the boat, on the ship coming back to the States, they had to pull anchor for a torpedo kept from hitting them.
Oh my gosh.
And sometime during that trip, they had to turn too, and another one skipped right along the side.
Uh-huh.
But as rough as that water was when I went over there, when we come back, it was just as smooth as glass.
No kidding.
Never seen anything like that.
Change in the weather.
Changing the weather.
Yes, sir.
And after I was on board, I think one day, they x-rayed me, and they said, you can go wherever you want. I said, you're okay. Be strapping on. I wasn't in no danger.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, so then after you were out of the hospital, then what happened?
They gave me a 30-day furlough,
Okay.
and that's when I come back and they had lost me.
That's when they lost all your records?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness sakes. I know crazy things happen. Well, so then what happened after your 30-day furlough?
Well, I finally got a 21-day delay en route. And that's why I crossed the country so many times.
Sure.
And
You were having a real vacation, weren't you?
I was enjoying it,
Sure.
part of the time anyway.
And you were seeing parts of the country, of course,
yeah.
for the first time?
Yeah. Yeah, we had maneuvers up there in Washington, right in the edge of where the snow was.
Oh, yeah, up near Fort Lewis.
Yeah. I guess
How about
preparing
that?
us for what we was going to hit over there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, when did you find out that you were, I mean, they didn't send you back to the Aleutians, did they?
No.
No. So when did you find?
I joined the 44th Division and of course they put me as a machine gunner.
Why did you think they assigned you to the 44th? They needed foot soldiers? Or?
I don't know.
Yeah, probably
But
so.
they were headed for France.
Headed for France.
We stopped over in England for about a week, I think, maybe less.
Went across the Atlantic on another big ship?
Yeah. And then we landed in Cherbourg.
Cherbourg, France.
And we missed D-Day by long enough that we missed getting the battle ribbon for that for 2 days,
yeah.
I think.
Right, I understand.
And
Sure.
that was really rough over there, going through them hedges. I think they put a blade on the front of a bulldozer on front of a tank and got their way through those.
Through those hedgerows
hedges,
and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, of course, I never got to the ETO, but I've read a lot about it and so forth. Now, tell me about going across northern France. You were a foot soldier, of course.
Yeah.
You marched.
Yeah.
You walked.
The first gun emplacement that I was in, some people had been there. I don't know how long they'd been there. We were just a few yards away from the old World War II trenches.
Old World War I, you mean?
World War I. I mean.
Yeah, right.
And they pointed to a tree. They said, 2 trees up there, and your gun emplacement's right between them. Well, I got up there and got in that hole, and there was a guy in there. He had died, and they never did get him out.
German.
No, it was ours.
Oh, American.
Yeah, and we pulled him out. It took 2 hours to get him out of that hole. And he laid on the bank there of that hole for about 2 weeks.
For heaven's
And that's how long we was under fire there. And I remember the next morning, the other tree on the other side of the gun emplacement was down.
Oh, my goodness.
And I lived in that hole all that time.
For heaven's sake.
And they finally did take off and attacked.
Uh-huh.
And it seemed to me like after the artillery and everything, we just took off, and it was long in the afternoon.
Right.
And we kept going, and we didn't meet nobody. We just kept going, and finally started getting daylight. And we started digging foxholes. And some of the guys always started wandering around and seeing where they was at, and they found we was on top of the German line. There was German holes real close to us.
For heaven's sake.
And when daylight come, boy, everything broke loose.
Now, this is right after you moved in
When I
from
got in?
Cherbourg?
Yeah.
So this was early on in your European movement.
Yeah.
The 44th Division, now did that have artillery backup?
Yeah. We had an artillery observer with us part of the time, and of course he had to sleep sometime.
Sure.
And he'd point out different places it would be a target and give us the coordinates, and we'd call for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was good. I remember one time we was up on like a mountain. He was way down in the valley, and there was somebody had a team of mules or horses or something down there in a wagon too far away to tell.
Yeah.
And he fired at them, and he busted the horses away from the wagon.
Oh,
one went in one direction, one in the other direction. He almost hit both of them.
For heaven's
He
sake.
was good.
Oh my goodness!
We used to tell him, hey, you see that house down there? You don't bother that. We're going to sleep there tonight.
Save that house.
Yeah.
How about that? Well, my gosh, you know, Ruben, as a soldier now, you're pretty darned experienced, particularly after the Aleutians and so forth. But what was it like to be in a foreign country like that? Did you come across citizens, natives?
Yeah, we at one time we were in a farm. Of course, that was right up my alley, and of course they left, and we was billeted there. We sat there for, I guess, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks maybe.
Wow.
And we started gathering the eggs.
Yeah.
And then we started killing the chickens. We even the kitchen even killed one of the beasts for us.
Oh my God.
And I think when we left there, somebody led an old cow around along with them for a while, a day or so, and milked her.
Uh-huh.
We really had a time there.
Fresh milk.
We didn't eat the food they brought up to us.
Oh my. You had better food than the regular Army rations.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Well, you see, there you are, you know, a very experienced young guy.
The French, we built it sometime with the French people.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get along as well as we did with the Germans.
Really?
No, we didn't.
You like the Germans?
Yeah, we liked them better.
How about that? How about that? Well, the French have always had kind of an edgy...
Now, they were fighters. We had some of their tanks supported us a time or two, and man, they were good.
Were they?
I thought better than ours.
Uh-huh. No kidding. I'll be darned.
They had a 88.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that thing.
88 millimeter.
You hit, and then you hear it far.
Yeah.
That was so fast.
It's so
And they had what you call a screaming Mimi.
Yep.
It was like 5, I think. And when they fired them, the fire hit the ground and made a noise. And then when they landed sort of like that. And wherever one of them landed, there'd be a hole you could drive a Jeep in.
Good grief. Oh my gosh.
It was scary.
How about casualties? How about your buddies? And
I had one that was, me and him was digging a hole together. And artillery come in and found it all around us. And he just keeled over. And he died. And couldn't find a mark on him. It was his first day. He was a replacement.
Uh-huh.
It was his first day in combat.
Oh my goodness.
And couldn't find no mark on him. I don't know what happened. What really killed
Isn't
him.
that something?
I think he's either had a heart attack or he's scared to death.
Sure, sure.
I remember up in the Aleutians we had one like that.
Uh-huh.
A great big 6-foot guy, and we were throwing hand grenades at one another. That's how close we were. And he was so frightened. He just pulled a shelter half up over his head, and he just laid there. He couldn't even give us his hand grenades to throw.
Good heavens, yeah.
But that happens to people.
Oh, yes, it does. It does. But here you are, an experienced soldier by the time you were in France, and I'll bet replacements look to you for leadership and help.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot we could do to help them.
No, but I mean, you could,
Yeah.
you could give them spiritual help, and well, that's so important because, as you pointed out, replacements could be just had the living daylight scared out of them. And
But you talk about that time when we come back from going and getting the ammunition on Attu, that was a bloody mess.
I'll bet.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah.
And we just missed it.
Now so you were wounded in the Aleutians, and were you wounded in France too?
There was a time up there when we had a real, I don't know where it was, but it was like we was coming out of the woods, and there was a great big open field, and it got so bad there Matter of fact, there I learned how to I knew how to dig a slit trench.
Mm-hmm.
But I dug that thing and laying flat on the ground.
No
And
kidding.
when I rolled over in that thing, it was a tight fit.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thankful for that because artillery, the firing was so bad. My field jacket had some slits in them, that long, a couple of them.
Really?
And the shovel, that we could make a hoe out of it. The ring that held it together, that was broken. If I hadn't been in that thing, I think I'd have been killed.
My goodness sakes.
And got a scratch,
Yeah.
but wasn't even reported
Uh-huh.
until later, and that's what I got my cluster for.
Oh, I see.
And I
I
remember when the truce was over, they had a truce to take care of the dead and the wounded. And at one time there was a medic out there from the Germans and our medic too, working on the same person.
Is that so?
And when that truce was over, right back to fighting again.
Yeah.
I remember when we left there, I remember seeing one guy, I never forget him, I guess. He was laying in a prone position, sighting over his rifle, and he was still holding it. But he had got hit in the head and killed him instantly.
Yeah. And they had those big helmets.
Yeah.
That big old German helmet that
But
was.
the most people that I seen that was dead, we were relieved one time. We had been online for a long time, and we just stopped, and they went through us. And
Really? They overran you?
they wanted to relieve our outfit.
Oh, I see.
From the front
I got
line.
you. I see.
And they took a place of us, and that was long in the afternoon, I think. And there was a lot of artillery and bombing and everything going on that night. And the next day, there was a convoy of trucks come back, and they had trailers behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was men stacked in there on them trucks and on them trailers, and just like you stack up cord of wood.
Gosh.
That's how many there were, and it's one after another.
Just horrible.
It was
Horrible.
It's just hard to believe that
You
that
know,
many killed.
and you never forget things like
You
that.
never forget them.
Yeah, indelible memory. Oh my goodness. Well, speaking of that, and the wounded in the field, our medics were pretty darn good, weren't they?
They were, but they needed pallbearers. Somebody picked people up,
Oh my God.
and they took. We had twin boys in our outfit, and they took one of them to do that, and the other one ended up picking him up.
Picking up his brother. Yeah. My goodness. How sad. How sad. How sad. Now let's see. At this time, that would be 44. You were what? 20, 21, 22?
I guess so when he was 21.
Something like that. 44. Well, no. 21. Yeah, you were 23 then. Yeah. Now, going across France, this would have been in the summer of 44. It was
I remember the winters more than I did.
after D-Day. Yeah, well, what I'm trying to get is your experience with the transition of and the change of the season. You know, going from summer to fall, and then were you in the Ardennes? Were you at
We went through the Black Forest. I remember that.
Black Forest? I mean, were you in the Battle of the Bulge?
I was in the Battle of Bulge. They used our outfit. They kept breaking through in different places.
Yeah.
They used our outfit to go over and help push them back.
Yep.
And then they'd break through somewhere else, and we'd go over there and
Yeah.
push them back. And they kept us running all the time.
Oh my gosh.
We were,
Well, now, when you were, did you have any, in your movement, did you have any transport, or boots on the ground all the way, or what?
Well, when we had very far to go, we had loaded in trucks.
I see. Troop carriers?
Yeah, I remember one time we had 17 guys on a Jeep.
Oh my goodness. That baby could hardly move.
I don't think they could see it.
Oh my golly, isn't that something? How how about any humorous incidents that you can remember? Any funny times? You were up against desperate things all the time,
Yeah,
but
most of the time. I remember.
but usually there was some kind, some light moment that happened that. Well, anyway, moving on through the. So, were you in the Battle of the Bulge in December of '44 when it was so desperate and the Germans were moving? And did you have any contact with Patton? Patton's army?
One time when our outfit was supposed to be at rest, they pulled our
Supposed to be
company
what?
out. We had, back in the rest area.
Oh, I see.
They pulled our company out to go get him. He had run out of gas, remember? We had to fight our way into him, take him gas.
Good gosh, isn't that something? Oh my goodness. Well, I tell you, you've had experiences that are just so impressive and so. Now, do you remember when the famous moment when the weather finally cleared and we were able to get our fighter planes?
I remember those fighter planes pretty good.
Yeah.
Because up in the Aleutians, they strafed us once. You put banners out so they can tell where the front line is.
Yeah.
They mistook it and they bombed the wrong side.
Oh, gee.
Those planes, I'm telling you, they were good.
Yeah.
Some of those mountains are so close together, they had to turn up like this to get through.
Yeah.
And they strafed those mountains.
Yeah.
And they strafed us too.
Oh my gosh. So-called friendly fire, huh?
Yeah.
So much
I
for
don't
that.
think anybody was hurt.
Oh, I hope not. Oh my goodness.
But I remember getting up and taking a blanket, and I was just waving this blanket. When they come and they get close to me, and I'd throw it down and dive in the hole.
Oh gosh.
It didn't do no good.
Oh my goodness sakes.
When they run out of ammo, they left.
Yeah, thank goodness. Now, did this same sort of thing happen in France when our Mustangs came over finally? The skies cleared.
I can remember going through where they had bombed cities.
Yeah.
I remember particularly Ulm, Germany, and it looked like everything was flattened out except a church.
Really?
But that church had a lot of scars on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that.
Did you ever see
I remember those people coming out from under the rubble.
Yes.
They lived in their basement. I don't know how they made it. They must have really been in bad shape.
Did you ever see the movie Saving Private Ryan?
No.
Yeah. This is so fascinating to me because I was always at sea. I was on 2 different ships for 3 years at sea, but to be on land and to be fighting hand to hand and seeing the enemy and so forth, it must have been kind of scary.
There was one time, it was a big field open in front of us, and we were like on the edge of the woods. It seemed like it was always coming out of the edge of the woods into the field and into the town. And my gun emplacement was way up front, and on down the hill, they had gun emplacements. And I happened to be we took turns on guard at night. And it was my turn to be a guard. And I was sitting there I was sitting up on the edge of the hole and had a shoulder half around me. And I thought, man, it's starting to rain. I pulled my hand out from under, and it wasn't raining. So I knew what it was. And man, I jumped on that gun and started firing it. And with every 5th bullet, it just lit that whole field up.
Wow.
And they were attacking us. And it wasn't far, and they just coming down that hill. You couldn't count them, so many of them. And when I opened up, then a couple guns on down below me did, and they drew back. But when it come daylight, there was 2 guys right in front of my gun, almost close as near to you.
My word.
I had fired over their head.
Yeah.
And they just laid there, and they still had their weapons. They could have knocked our whole battalion, whole platoon out, or squad out.
Now, they were dead?
No.
They were alive?
They were alive. They couldn't throw their grenades at us because they'd get them too. They're that close.
Sure, too close.
So when daylight come, they stood up and we took them
prisoner. Now, what did you do with prisoners when you take somebody like that? I mean,
Well, they go back in our big shots, interview them, I guess, find out what they're doing.
yeah,
and
they went back
But
there.
I remember I was assigned with a couple other guys to take some prisoners back. And I remember one time they said, why don't we just shoot them, not have to go back?
That's right.
Of course, you can't do that.
No, you can't do that. I know. But, you know, you'd like to have saved all that energy and time and everything. Well, then when you finally broke out of the Ardennes, and now, before the Ardennes, were you in the Hurtgen Forest?
I don't remember the name of it.
Okay, that I know that was kind of the prelude to the Battle of the Bulge. But that's fascinating about your getting gasoline to Patton so he could keep moving.
Yeah. Well, he got us out too.
Pardon?
That time when we first took off and went all night long.
Yeah.
Of course, the people had thrown away their ammo. They got rid of everything just to keep walking. And we didn't have a whole lot to fight with. I still had my gun though.
Yeah.
And he come in and got us out of there.
I'll be darned. Yeah.
I remember coming when we left. You started going down through the field. I remember there was a guy laying there had been hit in the head, and a cow was chewing on his brains. You see some terrible things.
Oh, terrible things, I should say. Yes.
It was one time the German tanks was right on our line, and they was moving up to a foxhole, and they lowered their gun and turned that one 50 caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a artillery observer with us, and he called on artillery on his hole. He knocked that tank out.
My goodness sakes. Now, I interviewed a fellow recently who was telling us about the difference between the German and the American tanks. The German tanks the turret could only turn 180 degrees. American tanks could turn clear around. Did you notice that difference or anything like that?
No.
That was one of the few advantages that we had over the German
We had some anti-tanks with us, and man, they were good.
Oh, they were really great.
Yeah.
Really great. Well, now, you mentioned Ulm, Germany. That was after crossing the Rhine or after crossing the Elbe River? Or do you remember crossing the rivers?
I can't. I remember. Yeah, we retreated one time. We was right at a river, and there was a bridge there, and I was thinking, hey, I'm a machine gunner, and always the enemy was up there. Now I'm a machine gunner, and the enemy's behind me.
Oh my gosh! Oh my!
That was kind of a weird feeling.
Ooh, that's weird. I know that's not supposed to happen. Well, you were lucky to find a bridge to cross over on.
I don't know if when we retreated, I don't know if they blew that bridge up or not. I think maybe.
Did you ever have to ford a stream or anything like that?
No.
Well, that's good. Because I know so many guys.
They were pretty good at building a pontoon bridge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you suffer? You talked about your feet and.
Yeah, I remember one time
the winter time.
We were kind of stalemate there. We were waiting for them to tell us when to take off.
Right.
And I was so tired and sleepy and cold, I just laid down on the ground and went to sleep. And somebody come around and kicked me on the bottom of the shoe and said, wake up, you're going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
And I'd get up and stomp around a while, and next thing you know, I'd back down there again.
Yeah, just tired.
They probably saved my life, waking me up like that.
Isn't that something? Yes, yes. And I know so many fellas suffered terrible. Their shoes worn out and their socks were wet and cold. And
you said, did I have any moments of, there was one time.
Good.
We was up in Austria, I believe it was, when the war ended. And we didn't take their ammunition away, their guns or nothing, they kept it. And we stayed on one side of the river and they were on the other side of the river. And they guarded the other end of that bridge, and we guarded this end of that bridge.
Now, peace had been called, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, It ceased fire anyway.
Ceasefire.
It was over there.
Yeah, right.
And I remember we was there for, I guess a week, maybe longer. And my wife used to send me popcorn and funny papers and stuff.
Oh, you were
that.
married by this time?
No, my future.
Oh, your future wife. I got you.
And
Your sweetheart.
And I'd share it with those people.
Yeah.
But they didn't really care for that. They wanted peaches and corn and stuff like that, and I'd take it out of the kitchen and take it to them. but there was a couple on the other side of the river that I kind of got to know them. I remember they were real good seamstress, and I had that jacket, and it didn't fit. But they took that thing and cut it down and made it like tailor-made suits.
Oh,
and
what a nice thing.
You give them a cake of soap, they would keep your clothes clean. And
Sure.
And, but this one night, they had a house on one side of the street that they lived in, really. A house on the other side of the street, they had a room where they slept. And the mother, I couldn't really have a conversation with them other than just sign language and the newspapers and stuff. And we'd leave there to go home at night. And she'd put her hand in some holy water or something, flipping on each one as they left the door. But this one night, she brought out something to drink. Well, I don't drink. I never did. And I thought, what am I going to do? Well, I just swallowed. And I did. And man, I must have turned purple. They just hee-hawed. They laughed. They had a big time out of that. But we were supposed to have left the next morning. But that's how she brought that out. I don't know how they knew it. Nobody was supposed to know it. And
wow.
So the next night, we were still there, so I was back over there again and just went through the same thing. And this time she brought out a drink. She said, this won't do that. She said, and it went down so smooth, I could have drank a bottle full of it. I don't know what it was. But while we were there, it was like a dry place, and they was praying for rain.
Yeah.
And they meet down by the river, and this one person carried an umbrella. I guess she believed it was going to rain.
Trying to bring on the rain, huh?
But when we finally did leave there, we were loaded up in these trucks. And I'm telling you, the streets were lined with people. Everybody in town must have come out.
Really? This was in Austria?
In Austria.
How about that?
And
Friendly.
friendly as could be.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. But one of them, this one place where I was going to, they said, you don't write no letters to us. Because her husband was a SS troop.
Oh my goodness.
And they didn't want him to know.
Yeah, right.
And we never did communicate.
Well, Ruben, you had some wonderful experiences in a desperate time. The stories you tell about being with people and, the other side. And did you think that maybe the Austrians were more friendly than the Germans?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
When we left there, they put me on a boat and I was headed for Japan.
I know the experience.
And that's when they dropped the
Sure.
bomb.
August 1945.
Yeah.
But you were on a ship headed across the Pacific?
Headed for Japan, yeah.
And where did you finally wind up?
They come back home.
I mean, did they come about and come back to the mainland, or did you go on?
New York, I think. They came back to the States somewhere. I don't remember exactly where.
Oh, I see. You were coming across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I see. You
And
were not.
they just turned us loose.
Yep.
And they told us to take our duffel bag and everything home, and you come back to where we was going to get discharged.
I see.
And or for our next camp. We didn't know we was going to get discharged that quick, but we did.
You had plenty of points.
And I got out on the point system.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went back and turned in my duffel bag and my rifle and my .45 pistol, and nobody else did. They all lost theirs. But I took mine back.
See, you were a smart, experienced guy. You knew how to take care of yourself.
But when I don't know where we was going or coming, we was on a Queen Mary.
Oh,
And man, that thing was loaded.
yeah.
And there was some people in there had cards, and they got to gambling. And this one guy, he was real smart, I guess, and he went around and bought up all these cards, and he was taking a till from each one of the games.
Oh.
And he had so much money, he had to have somebody guard it for him 24 hours a day.
No
He
kidding.
tried to get the captain to put it in the safe, and he wouldn't do it.
How about
So I
that?
don't know how much money he got home with.
Gambler's money. Oh,
Yeah.
my God. Well, the Queen Mary, she was a fast ship, too,
Yeah.
wasn't she? And you came straight
I
across.
remember there was floating bombs or something out there, and they'd fire at them things and try to
Yeah.
explode them to the distance.
Well, your experiences have are just incredible, Ruben. And you got back home. We're running a little short on time now, but did you go back to the mill after you were discharged?
I went back to the mill, and I'd gotten a raise while I was gone.
You got a raise while you were gone?
2 cents.
How much?
2 cents.
2 cents an
I
hour.
was making 55 cents when I went, and come back I was making 57.
That is incredible. Isn't that something, though? And then you got married?
Yeah, got married a week after I got home.
Week after you got home. So that was 1945.
Yeah.
How about that? You've been married for
Well,
54 years.
I was married for 59 years when my wife died.
Oh.
And then I married this lady here. She's a beautiful woman.
I know. Aren't you lucky, though?
Well, I love her so much.
I know. God bless you, Ruben. It's just been a great honor to be with you and to hear your story and to see your medals and this wonderful display and your division patches and everything. You got the Bronze Star for heroism and the Purple Heart with cluster for your wounds, and of course your campaign ribbons both in the Pacific and the European theater. God bless you, Ruben. It's just been a great honor. And hang in there, buddy.